All right, guys, we're back from a weekend of racing, and we now have a new fastest truck on the channel, which is awesome, but that means the truck that got replaced, the step side, well, that just means we have a few more upgrades we need to do to this thing to make it a little bit faster. My new fastest truck is the ugly truck right here, as I call it, Turbo 8.1 Big Block. We just clicked off an 11.6 at 118 miles an hour in the quarter at like 5,500 feet of elevation, no less, with a DA of like 8,300 feet because of the humidity, the temperature, elevation, all that good stuff, which is awesome. Long term though, the goal for that truck is to be somewhere around like a low 8 or even a high 7-second quarter mile, which we do have a 1,500 horsepower capable big block that's going to be arriving nearly any day now. I know I've been saying that for months. I actually just went back through my records and I found we placed the order, or we started this project October 25th, and now it is June 1st. Yeah, supply chain issues are real apparently. But anyway, long-term goal, high 7 or low 8-second quarter. But for the step side, even though this thing runs a 12.1 right now, long term, I want this thing to be not quite as fast. Like, I think I'd be happy with a low 11 or even a high 10, because this is more just kind of like a fun daily driver style truck. And one of the things that's actually stopping me from getting to that goal, other than the fact that we will need a fair amount more power, is the transmission. Right now it has a stock, or rather unknown, I think it's stock 4L60 in it, which actually is holding up remarkably well considering this is a 4,800 pound truck and it's got over 500 wheel horsepower. But I think to meet our goal of like the, let's see, what did I say, low 11s, maybe high 10s for this truck, we're gonna have to be like 7 or 750 horsepower, somewhere in that ballpark, I guess. I don't think the 4L60 is gonna last long term. I guess I've spent the last 2 minutes just kind of saying we're in the middle of rebuilding a transmission for this truck, or not rebuilding. Last time you guys saw it, this is what we started with. It's a remanufactured / brand new 4L80 transmission. It is a little bit earlier model year case. It doesn't have the top hole. I covered all that stuff in an earlier video, but basically everything on the inside is brand new. And last time we tore it apart, we dual fed the direct clutches. And now all we've got to do, because all the guts are back inside, is finish the shift kit in the valve body and put this thing back together with our Circle D torque converter, which, by the way, at the track this weekend, the converter in the ugly truck, same exact one as that, it performed amazingly. I just love how it shifts. It puts down the power. It has a fairly low RPM drop in between the gears, but it still has a nice crisp shift to it. So I love that converter. If you need one, definitely check out Circle D. But anyhow, getting off track here. Yeah, we're gonna be doing a shift kit today. And one more thing, if you guys have kids and if they like gaming or anything like that, we have a YouTube channel you need to check out. What's it called?
Ultimate Gamer.
We got a channel that's called Ultimate Gamer. And what's on your shirt, buddy? Minecraft. So what else do you do on your channel? Minecraft and Roblox. So if your kids like that stuff, check out his channel. It's called Ultimate Gamer. I'll put a link down in the description below. He's kind of taken after his dad a little bit, which is awesome, you know, hashtag proud dad moment. So yeah, your kids like that stuff, check it out. He'll be doing videos. How often?
Pretty much every day.
He says pretty much every day, maybe a couple of times a week. We'll work on that. And I even actually play Minecraft with him. So kind of a tangent there, but let's get back to the transmission. All right, no idea what this particular step is, but basically we are pulling out the filter, taking off the O-ring. You gotta grind the end of that filter just a little bit because there's not quite enough room per the instructions. We install a plug down there, a spring, and a different end cap. Again, no idea what that actually does, but we're doing it. All right, this port right here, I think is called an accumulator according to the instructions. Two different options for springs. And it looks like if you want the firmer shifts, you use only the inner small spring, which that's what we're gonna do. All right, this one's simple. You just replace that spring with that spring. Easy. So this final change we're gonna do here, we're just gonna drill 3 holes in the separator plate. And we are reusing the original separator plate. I'll get to that in just a second. But basically, there's 3 holes in here I get to identify and drill out to a very specific size, which is going to adjust the firmness of the 1-2, 2-3, and 3-4 shift. So let's get to drilling. I think on my last one I actually went with like 1/8 of an inch and that worked pretty good. I am going to double check my old instructions just to be sure though. So drilled the holes out, we're just gonna hit it real quick with a aluminum block with some sandpaper on just to kind of knock down those little burrs on the back. So I've been inside a handful of transmissions in my day, and I've got no problem taking stuff apart and putting it back together. I can follow instructions, but what really blows my mind is the people who actually like engineer and design this stuff. They're like, oh yeah, let's put 7 little 1/4-inch check balls in there and that'll do something. Blows my mind, the smart people that invented it. 'Cause just, I mean, look at all that. Just look at it. We have the transmission 100% put back together minus the pan, and we are just about ready to get this thing installed in the truck. But there's one very, very important thing that I double checked, and I'm glad I did, because if I did not, it potentially could have burnt up this transmission on the first like full throttle rip that we did. Now, one simple thing is actually the oil level on the dipstick. See, the accepted height of oil for a running transmission like a 4L80 is about 1/4 of an inch above the pan rail. where when I put my dipstick and tube assembly together, the little hole that marks the full level is actually about an inch below that. Now, I don't know how much fluid that would translate into with a pan of that size, but I'd be willing to guess it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 3 to 4 quarts, which, you know, a gallon of fluid low is probably not something that you want to be running with. The combination we have here, this is a stock 4L80. It's a factory or a aftermarket factory Delco dipstick tube for like a 2001 2500 HD with a 6.0 and a 4L80. So same kind of truck, LS with a 4L80. That's the dipstick tube. And this is the original dipstick itself. So just kind of double check this if you're putting one together. This one actually is also a little bit too long. Normally it's supposed to sit like on top of that. So basically what we'll do is we'll snip that off. We'll make a new mark at the right height, 1/4 of an inch above there, and that'll save us probably a bunch of headaches. Got the dipstick taken care of, and then I put the pan back on, got the transmission on the ground. And then, like an idiot, I spent the last hour cleaning up the case of the transmission, which it looked perfectly fine before in its natural cast finish, but I just could not stand those bumps that are on the outside of some of these transmissions. So I got the little Scotch-Brite pad out on the angle grinder and I just went to town. And I originally was only gonna smooth out like 1 or 2 small areas, but then you know how that goes. Next thing you know, we have reached the point of no return and I've basically smoothed out the entire transmission case. And this is kind of what we're left with. It does look a little bit shiny. We are gonna paint it now. And I'm probably gonna go with like a semi-gloss black just to match the engine, because the engine is painted up. I left one spot just to kind of show you what we started with. Like you can see all those rough bumps and stuff. And I didn't get them all, but I got most of them. And of course, the area where I spent most of my time is the spot that you're never ever gonna see, which is like totally contradictory. But I never paint stuff. And this is exactly why, because you end up spending so much time, and I'm not a painter, I can't stand it. But now I am gonna do it because I think it'll look kind of cool. So, I don't know. Anyway, the 4L80 is done. I did have a few questions about the recipe that I used and some questions about some of the parts and tools that I used along the way. So, call this like the FAQ section. The first is actually about the little fixture that I have to hold the 4L80 onto the engine stand. This one did come from eBay. I forget the price. It's probably less than $100. But basically these little screws go into those pockets on the side of the transmission case. But this one is specific to a 4L80 because you can kind of see this screw right here, how it's so close to the end. That's because there's that little bump out in the side of the case over here. So that screw goes like in that hole right there. And as you can see, that's kind of what would interfere. So I got it on eBay. I'll try to put a link in the description for this one, but just search 4L80 transmission holder or something like that. Fairly inexpensive, and it definitely saves your back because everything is, you know, kind of standing up straight. And that's just like a generic part store engine stand, and it's cut a couple different holes on there to fit pretty much anything. So that's that. The second question I got quite a bit on the last video was why am I deviating from the instructions on the shift kit? There's 2 areas which I changed, and not because I'm like a transmission whiz and I know more than anybody else, but I've done a lot of research on 4L80s, and a lot of this stuff is kind of like accepted practice, if you will. And once again, I'm duplicating the process that I used on my other truck. So for me, I kind of know it works. I'm not saying you need to do this, but this is just kind of what I did and why. I did omit the separator plate. They include this to dual feed the direct clutch. We actually did an internal dual feed mod, so we don't need this plate. But the theory, or why people don't want to run this, is because they internally dual feed using this 3-layer separator plate. And basically the worry is that it can leak internally, but like you can see, so this hole right here, you can see all the way through. This one, you cannot. So basically there's a hole in the top layer, there's a groove in the middle layer, and I think like these two circuits or these two holes are connected. So basically oil will go in, run down, and then come out. I don't know if that's the exact routing, but there's, that's what they do with the separator plate. And the worry is that it could leak internally and you lose a little bit of pressure. So rather than using this separator plate, I use my original one. You do drill the same 3 holes for the shifting, which is, I forget, I think this one, I don't know, there's 3 somewhere in the middle. So that's the separator plate. The pressure relief valve I did not install. Basically this is in case you have a spike in line pressure somehow. That little tapered seat right there, you drill a hole in the valve body, and there's a spring and a little E-clip somewhere over there. Anyway, that will pop off if the pressure gets too high, and it's supposed to seat right back in place when the pressure returns to normal. But people say that valve can get stuck open, which will cause you to have like permanent low line pressure, which will burn up your transmission. So once again, I skipped it in that transmission, so I'm skipping it in this one, and it's working fine so far. So we'll continue to do that. Let's see, that's my recipe. I did have, I forget where I put it, but there's also 2 more tools I was gonna show you. This one for lining up the pump halves on a 4L80. It's just a simple band. I think this one came from Amazon or eBay. A couple bucks there. And then finally, to help install the, what are they called? The lip seals and the piston, I had a tool. Here's another one. I bought a pack of 5. This guy here, it's called the Lip Wizard. This came from eBay. It's just a simple thin piece of plastic, but it just kind of helps roll the lip seals in place. You basically put a bunch of assembly lube on this thing and just kind of roll it around, and it'll help push the seals into the drum. So those are the tools that I used. That's the shift kit. That's my theory or my strategy. In summary, we have a stock rebuilt 4L80 with a dual fed direct clutch. We have the stock amount of clutches. We probably could have done some upgrades there, but so far everything's holding up. And of course, the icing on the cake is the Circle D converter, triple disc lockup, 3500 stall. I forget what we went with now, but that's gonna wrap things up for this 4L80. I do need to get it painted now. We talked about that. I do need to get it in the truck very soon. We are going to be rebuilding the NV149 and adapting that to work with the 4L80 because that has the bigger output shaft. I don't know, to steal a line from Taylor, what does he say? Rambling on or something like that. Oh, enough jibber jabber. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate you. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment. We'll see you soon. So a little bit later, that's the finished product. I figured I'd just show you in this video rather than dragging it out. We used some self-etching primer and just some Ford semi-gloss black engine spray paint, and that's how it looks. Definitely, I like the look of it a whole lot better. It's now going to match the engine because that's what I painted the engine with. Also painted the little inspection cover reinforcement plate thing. I didn't do the dipstick because that's sort of kind of close enough. And then we have the cast iron extension housing or transfer case adapter also painted up. So that is what we're going to use to put this thing together in the near future. Stay tuned, guys. Thank you once again.